No. Let go. Help. It was just as I was returning from work, exhausted from overtime, that I was suddenly seized from behind in a tight grip, losing my freedom of movement. I tried to call for help, but a large hand covered and sealed my mouth. Despite desperately trying to escape, I couldn't break free from the firm grasp. Eventually, I was dragged into a dark, cramped shed in the garden. I felt my life was in danger.
Oh no.
Someone help me. Calm down, it's me. The voice of the person holding me down from behind reached my ears. Recognizing the familiar voice, I stopped resisting. I cautiously turned around, and through a slight opening in the shed door, I saw the face of my brother-in-law illuminated by the light. I'm sorry for doing this so suddenly. But this was the only way. The one restraining me was my brother-in-law. His apologetic expression was deadly serious, and it was clearly no prank or joke. Seeing that I had calmed down, he gently removed his hand from my mouth. Brother, why? It didn't seem like a joke, but I didn't understand the reason. As I asked why he had done this, a rattling noise came from outside. My brother-in-law put his finger to his lips to silence me and stared in the direction of the noise. Be quiet. They're coming. Who are they? Confused, I remained silent, and then I heard voices from the other side of the shed. I had never imagined I would hear such chilling things. I am Vanessa. I'm a 32-year-old office worker living with my husband, Patrick. I met my husband at the gym we both attended. I was struggling to use the training machine when he helped me out. He was considerate, kind, and had a charming personality, and we quickly hit it off. We were quickly drawn to each other, and it didn't take long for us to start dating. Our relationship was going smoothly. The time we spent together was enjoyable, and I naturally started to think about our future together. Patrick felt the same way, and during our dating period, he often hinted at a future together, including marriage. I vividly remember how happy I was when he actually proposed. However, our path to marriage wasn't smooth. His mother was strongly opposed not only to our marriage but even to our dating. Whenever I tried to greet her, she would refuse, saying, "I can't believe my precious son is being seduced by a woman of unknown origins. I will never approve of your marriage or even your dating." Break up with Patrick immediately. Despite being consistently rejected, I didn't give up and kept visiting with gifts. Though I was never even allowed inside the house. As months of opposition passed, various life changes like a job switch and the passing of my parents drastically altered my circumstances. As my mental resilience waned, the opposition that I had once faced head-on became increasingly difficult to bear. Patrick also seemed disheartened. I almost gave up on our relationship when, against all odds, my husband, who had once been dismissed regarding both marriage and dating, said, "I'll convince her. I promise." In the end, his mother approved our marriage. It was unbelievable. I had thought our future together was hanging by a thread, so the relief brightened my spirits. When we heard the news, we jumped for joy together. I was especially grateful that he had convinced his mother to accept me. That's how we finally embarked on our married life. However, even after our marriage, I never met his mother face to face. Our wedding involved only taking photos without a ceremony. And she said there was no need for greetings or contact. Since being driven away, I hadn't spoken a word with her. While Patrick occasionally visited his parents' house alone, I always stayed behind. Once I asked if I should greet her, but he simply replied, "It's okay." Perhaps his mother was still rejecting me. Considering the past opposition, I suspected she might not have accepted me at heart. Thinking it best not to force a greeting, we continued our peaceful life together. Then one day, we received a call from his mother. She had injured her leg and couldn't walk properly. Until then, only Patrick had been called to her house, but this time, she urgently requested my presence as well, and we headed to his parents' house together. Facing his mother for the first time in years, I felt tense. It's been a while, Mother. I'm Vanessa. My voice trembled slightly with nerves. His mother, with her leg bandaged, looked at me with the same sharp gaze she had years ago. Yes, it's been a while. I've been hearing about you from Patrick. Vanessa, I didn't accept your relationship with Patrick until now. But let's put all that behind us, shall we? She smiled as if to encourage me. Put it behind us? It was more like she had been the one rejecting from the start, but I remained silent and listened. It would be good if we could become a proper family now. Then you'll be more comfortable living here, right, Vanessa? Her tone was somewhat commanding. Was she suggesting that I move in and take care of her? Having been opposed in both marriage and dating, and having never spent much time with my mother-in-law, I didn't have a great impression of her. And now, suddenly, she was talking about living together. I couldn't easily agree. When she went to the restroom, I quietly appealed to my husband. I can't do this. I might visit occasionally, but I've never really talked to her before. And she's been opposing us for so long. I can't just start living together all of a sudden. Like during our marriage, I hoped my husband would decline for me. However, instead of showing any sign of retreat, he placed his hands on my shoulders. Don't say that, think about it. This could be a chance to deepen the relationship between you and my mother, Vanessa. You wouldn't want to keep having tensions with her, right? That might be true, but if you take care of my mother, I'm sure she will come to appreciate you more. She said she wants to let bygones be bygones, so it will be all right. She's not the same person she used to be. I'm always on your side, Vanessa, so let's try this together. Hearing this from my husband, who always tries to meet me halfway, made it even harder for me to refuse. Indeed, because of the past opposition, I didn't have a great impression of my mother-in-law. But what my husband said made sense. If I don't make an effort to reach out to my mother-in-law, our relationship will never improve. All right. Since it seems she's having trouble walking, I'll agree to live together. Thank you, Vanessa. That's just like you. Reluctantly, but reassured by my husband's support, I agreed to live with my mother-in-law. A few days after deciding to move in, we transferred all our belongings to my in-laws' house. While chuckling at the amount of stacked boxes, I stepped into the hallway to carry some unpacked items to the room. That's when I saw a man in his late 30s with a scowl, a stranger, standing at the end of the corridor. I gasped in surprise. Who could he be? Yet, certain he must be part of my husband's family. I'm Vanessa, Patrick's wife. Nice to meet you. Excuse me for asking, but may I know your name? Though I managed the greeting, before I could inquire who he was. The man merely glanced at me, gave a slight nod, and went into a room. I was left unsure of his identity. Just then, as Patrick passed by in the hallway tidying up, I quickly caught him and pointed to the door the man had entered, telling him about the incident. Patrick looked at the door with disgust. That's my brother. Your brother? I had never heard of him having a brother. He's a hopeless shut-in. I wonder how long he'll stay at home. I really wish he'd leave. It's truly a nuisance just having him here. You don't like it either, right? The brother was apparently Steve. For some reason, my husband strongly disliked him. Conversely, my mother-in-law was very fond of her shut-in son. From what my mother-in-law told me, Steve was academically and athletically gifted. Even called a prodigy, but one day, he just became a shut-in. while my mother-in-law lamented his sudden reclusion. She seemed happy to have her precious son at home and wasn't too upset about it. Steve rarely left his room. Hearing about him from both made him seem unapproachable. Being a shut-in, I seldom saw his face, and on the rare occasions I did, his expression was always stern. It felt as if he was emitting a stay-away vibe. There was something ominously difficult about him, and I couldn't help but feel frightened. After moving into my in-laws' home, just as I was getting used to the house, my mother-in-law's attitude, which initially promised to let bygones be bygones, began to change. "Vanessa, the kitchen isn't cleaned up. And this cleaning here is lacking. Are you really Patrick's wife?" Perhaps because of her injured leg, my mother-in-law left all the housework to me and started complaining. She had recovered enough to walk around quite a bit, but there was no sign of her doing any housework. As I also worked, it was difficult to manage perfect housekeeping every day. Despite trying to get her to understand, she would never agree. Moreover, she demanded care for her personal needs. The burden only grew, making it very hard for me. I reluctantly told my husband, "I'm too busy with work to meet your mother's daily housekeeping standards." His response was not supportive. "That's your fault, Vanessa. No wonder my mother is upset. Do better next time." Despite his promise to work together, it was always me who ended up caring for his mother in place of my increasingly overtime-bound husband. The housework we used to share seemed to be ignored by him under his mother's influence. The husband who had promised to be on my side had, at some point, started siding with his mother. But it wasn't just that. "You haven't finished folding the laundry again. You're useless, Vanessa. Give me money. Now." "What? Money? Why?" "It's a penalty for not being able to do the housework and making my mother angry. You deserve a penalty since you didn't manage." My income was confiscated by my husband for not managing the housework well. I only received the bare minimum for living expenses. My mother-in-law and husband used my confiscated money to buy whatever they wanted and indulged in luxuries. Meanwhile, I was forced to live frugally. My husband wasn't originally like this, but now any trace of his former kindness was gone. Yet, I still wanted to believe in him. I thought maybe he was just temporarily influenced by his mother, and that he would return to his old self. Holding on to that belief, I continued to do the various household chores after my mother-in-law and husband had gone to bed. One night, as I was washing up in the kitchen, Steve appeared in the dimly lit hallway.
Ah.
"Brother-in-law. Sorry, it's late at night. Did I disturb you?" I was inwardly startled by the rare encounter. Although I had tried to be as quiet as possible, I worried I might have woken him. "No, it's fine. Don't worry about it." That was the first time I heard Steve's voice. Until then, it had just been nods of acknowledgement, so I was surprised he could speak. With a low, calm voice, he took a drink from the fridge and returned to his room. Though we rarely spoke and he still had an unapproachable dark aura, I didn't think he was as bad as my husband hated. Maybe it was because I unconsciously compared him to my nagging mother-in-law and the husband who had lost his kindness. I felt a strange relief being able to talk normally, and I continued my chores. A few days later, one morning when I had to leave home earlier than usual for work, I hurriedly finished preparing breakfast. "Vanessa, could you organize this shelf for me? I want to put in some new magazines I bought. And clean it up a bit while you're at it. Please do it now." As she spoke, my mother-in-law pointed to a bookshelf crammed haphazardly with books and files. A shelf she always managed carelessly. It would take a decent amount of time to organize. However, the clock was ticking towards the time I needed to leave for work. I really didn't have the time. I'm sorry, I have to go to work now. I'll take care of the bookshelf when I get back. I don't care about your job. I'm in trouble here, can you organize it now? Reluctantly, as I tried to decline, my mother-in-law became angry, urging me to hurry. She could easily do the organizing herself. But it was I who was truly inconvenienced by her unreasonable demands. Even as I prepared for work, she continued to grumble and make snide remarks. Not wanting to upset her further, I asked my husband, who had a later start, to take care of the shelf. However, his response was not pleasant. That's a job your mother asked you to do. If you didn't have time, you should have woken up earlier. Don't push your failures onto me, okay? My husband rebuked me with a displeased look, acting as if he knew nothing of the matter. My mother-in-law's foot had healed a while back, and he still had time before he needed to leave. He could have easily helped his own mother. Why was he being so unreasonable? My mother-in-law continued to press, just do it quickly. And my husband blamed me for not waking up earlier. It was almost time for me to leave. I'm really sorry, but I must go now. I promise I'll do it when I get back. I really don't have time right now, so excuse me. Regardless of what they said, I had to go to work, so I rushed out of the house, escaping from them. Hey, Vanessa. Are you abandoning your family responsibilities? Wait. What is with that attitude? For a daughter-in-law. Their angry voices followed me even as the front door slammed shut. The hurtful words they had said haunted me all the way to work. Worn down from the morning's stresses and focusing my attention on my work, I returned home late at night after a long day of overtime. The imposing sight of my in-laws' house loomed before me. I dreaded to think how much housework had piled up. Once I opened the front door, I would be berated by those two again. I was so reluctant to return home that I didn't immediately reach for the door. Instead, I took a moment outside to breathe deeply and organize my thoughts. I decided to behave as usual once I got back. Just as I was calming my mind. What? Suddenly, I was seized from behind and my freedom was restricted. My eyes widened in shock, and for a moment I was voiceless. No. Let go. Help. I managed to squeeze out a cry for help, but before I could shout loudly, someone's hand covered and sealed my mouth from behind. Despite my desperate attempts to escape, I couldn't get away because I was firmly grasped. Finally, I was forcibly dragged backwards and shoved into a dark, cramped, large shed in the garden. There was someone behind me. What to do? I didn't want to be attacked. It's me, calm down. The calm, low voice of the person restraining me stopped my struggle. Cautiously, I turned around, and through a slight opening in the shed door, I saw my brother-in-law's face illuminated by the moonlight. I'm sorry for doing this so suddenly. But there was no other way. I won't do anything more, so please trust me and calm down. His face was dead serious. It didn't seem like a joke or a prank, and as I calmed my racing heart, I stopped resisting and he gently removed his hand from my mouth. Brother, why? While his seriousness was apparent, I didn't understand why he would do something like this. Just as I asked him, a rattling noise came from outside. It was coming from the direction of the house. My brother-in-law put his finger to his lips to silence me, then stared in the direction of the noise. Be quiet. They're coming. They? As instructed, I stayed silent, and soon I could hear voices speaking from behind the door. I thought I heard a noise, maybe it's just my imagination. She should be coming home soon, but she's late. Really, Vanessa is worthless, especially at times like this. Once she gets back, we'll tie her up and make her listen. I'm so tired of dealing with her. Let's just get it over with. My husband and mother-in-law. Tie her up and make her listen. I knew they were talking about me, but what exactly were they planning? A cold sweat ran down my face. We'll catch her off guard as soon as she gets back, she'll be off her guard then. I know, we have to be careful not to let our guard down. We finally approved your marriage for this reason, right? Make sure she can't resist when we. Hearing their conversation, I was horrified. My husband and mother-in-law were plotting something truly dreadful. My mind raced with panic. If I had gone home as usual, I might have been in mortal danger. Let's go inside and confirm the plan again. It's not good if someone hears us outside. At my husband's suggestion, the two of them went inside the house. I heard the front door close, and quietly, I stepped out of the shed with my brother-in-law. My heart was pounding unpleasantly. Relieved that we hadn't been found, but still distressed by their terrifying conversation. I knew that if those two caught us, it wouldn't end well. I'm really sorry for having such a mother and brother. I'm ashamed as your brother-in-law to have put you in danger like this. With his voice hushed, my brother-in-law deeply apologized. I shook my head frantically. No, it's not your fault, brother. If anything, I owe you my life, thank you. But why were they saying such things? I'll tell you what I know later. Right now, we need to focus on getting out of here. Once Mom and Patrick are asleep, Vanessa, you need to escape as soon as possible. Despite being tormented, I had no recollection of them ever threatening my life. My brother-in-law's expression hardened, and he said, "Talking here increases the risk of them finding out." He was right. It was time to escape. We exchanged contact information and quietly entered the house once the lights were off. With my brother-in-law's help, I managed to gather the bank books that had been taken from me and packed a minimal amount of belongings to safely escape from the house. I rented a vacant hotel room and took the next day off work. Early in the morning, I received messages from my husband and mother-in-law saying, "It's shameful not to return home. Come back immediately." I ignored both. Finally settling down, I contacted my brother-in-law. After briefly updating him on my situation, he was relieved to hear I had escaped safely. When I asked what was really going on, he replied sternly, "Actually, I accidentally overheard Mom and Patrick talking about targeting your assets." Targeting my assets? But my salary had been confiscated by my husband and mother-in-law. That must be a mistake. My salary was confiscated. Wasn't there something else? Perhaps a large inheritance from your parents. They were targeting that. His words made me realize something. Indeed, there was another bank account. It contained a large inheritance from my deceased parents. They had been targeting that inheritance. According to my brother-in-law, Patrick had discovered my parents' inheritance while we were dating. And he used it to persuade my mother-in-law, who had been strongly against our marriage. Blinded by the prospect of inheritance, my husband and mother-in-law conspired. They pretended to be on my side to marry me, then planned to take every last bit of the inheritance. I felt a darkness before my eyes. Neither my kind husband nor the approving mother-in-law had ever existed. It was all a sham to seize the inheritance. I'm really sorry for having such a terrible family. Actually, the reason I became a recluse was also because of family issues. He had been interfered with by his mother in his career and marriage prospects. His desired job was ruined by his mother's daily complaints to the company, claiming it wasn't suitable, and his potential wife was harassed persistently. Constantly demeaned by his brother, my brother-in-law lost hope and secluded himself at home. But this incident has been a wake-up call. If I stay under the roof of a parent who could harm their son's wife, I'll end up ruined too. I'm going to leave home, inspired by you, Vanessa. His voice sounded determined. Fortunately, as a former prodigy, my brother-in-law had talents that would make employment easy. And he had been receiving some passive income, which he partially gave to his mother. Apparently, my husband had been jealous of his brother, who was not only talented but also favored by their mother from a young age. I will also take steps to cut ties with my husband and mother-in-law. Please take care too, brother-in-law. I needed to settle things soon. With resolve, I ended the call and headed to the city hall to pick up a divorce form. It was the first step in separating myself from them. After living in the hotel for a few days, I set up a new home and went to work daily. I still received messages from my husband and mother-in-law, but I ignored them all. However, an incident occurred. Frustrated by not being able to contact me, my mother-in-law and husband actually stormed into my workplace. That woman has run off with our precious money. Vanessa is here, right? Let me talk to her. Your money is my money. Let me set the account for the salary deposit. Upon entering the company, they started causing chaos, knocking over plants and banging on walls, demanding me to come out. Their disgraceful behavior was more embarrassing than frightening. Unable to leave things as they were, I managed to calm them down for the moment and, with permission from my boss, arranged a meeting in the conference room. Since the situation might become unmanageable alone, I asked my boss, who had been supportive when my parents died, to be present. He kindly agreed. In front of my indignant husband and mother-in-law, I presented the divorce papers. Please sign the divorce papers. I will not return to you. I had always carried the pre-filled divorce form, ready for my husband to sign at any moment. After I stated this clearly, my husband scoffed at me. Divorce? Ridiculous. You can't just run off with our money and expect a divorce. Do you think you can escape? I'll start from scratch and fix you. He banged the table and spoke angrily. I was not intimidated by his demeanor. The money you forcibly took from me isn't your income, Patrick. Besides, the money given to me was minimal. After all this, do you think you're the ones who are justified? So what? Money between spouses is shared. No matter how firmly I spoke, my husband and mother-in-law seemed unfazed, dodging the issue without any sign of regret, refusing to sign the divorce papers. I know everything. Even your plans to take the inheritance. My husband and mother-in-law flinched. How do you know about that? Their faces seemed to say, remembering their dirty scheme to seize the inheritance. Shall I file the divorce or call the police? Which would you prefer? Calling the police is an exaggeration. Yes, it's an exaggeration. It's Vanessa's fault for running away. They still tried to justify themselves. I was astonished by their terrible gracelessness. My boss, unable to stand their twisted smiles, sighed deeply. Sir, madam. From what I've heard, what you're doing is not acceptable by any societal standards. What do you mean by barging into the company like this? It shows a lack of common sense. We could even call the police for your unauthorized entry. When the boss, who has a stern and imposing presence, threatened to call the police, both my husband and mother-in-law turned pale. There were no more excuses to be made. It seemed that my husband also felt this as he frantically scratched at his hair, sweat dripping down his face. Fine, I get it. I'll sign, okay? My husband grabbed the pen roughly and signed the divorce papers with sloppy handwriting. Muttering complaints, he kicked his chair and stormed out of the conference room. In a panic, my mother-in-law also hurried out. I apologized to my boss for the trouble caused by my family, to which he responded with a smile. It's okay. You can always rely on me. I was very grateful for his support. At least, I had obtained the signed divorce papers. I felt relieved now that I could finally walk the path of disengagement. Later, I decided to ask a lawyer to demand compensation from my husband. Actually, my brother-in-law had informed me that he had caught my husband cheating. The other woman was younger, and apparently, my husband had been visiting a hotel with her on the days he lied about working overtime. This explained the increase in his so-called overtime. Since I no longer felt love for him, I wasn't disappointed. All the resentment was towards my husband, who left all the housework and care of his mother to me while taking away my money and enjoying himself freely. The compensation was minimal, as it was based on his fault in the divorce. But he seemed displeased just to be asked for it. What the hell, compensation? Vanessa has no right to demand such a thing from me. You were the one who cheated. Just pay the compensation, please. Huh? A little cheating is fine. You're being too narrow-minded. Withdraw the compensation right now. Was he even aware of what he had done? His selfish remarks were chilling. The lawyer, standing beside me, mentioned, "You should be thankful to Vanessa. The compensation could have been much higher." Reluctantly, not wanting to increase the amount any further, my husband backed down. "Please make sure the payment is processed. And from now on, please stay away from me for various safety reasons." Hinting at their earlier plots with my words. My husband silently grimaced as if he had bitten into something bitter. I looked at him with a cold gaze, feeling it was only natural. If they targeted me again, it would be unbearable. The lawyer nodded in agreement, and we decided to issue a restraining order against my husband and mother-in-law. Soon after, I received a call from my brother-in-law. It seemed he had successfully escaped from the family home. Thanks to his reclusive behavior, he was able to leave smoothly without being noticed. 2 days after his escape, my mother-in-law, in a frenzy upon realizing he was gone, called me. "Steve has disappeared. It's your fault, you must have instigated him." I responded calmly to her ranting over the phone. "I haven't done anything. Isn't it because of your overbearing interference that your son has left? Moreover, you should keep your promise not to approach me. The lawyer has told you that you must not come near me." After I sharply put her in her place, my enraged mother-in-law lost her momentum and fell silent. I hung up the phone and blocked her number. I would never disclose my brother-in-law's whereabouts. She should reflect on her own actions. Sometime later, I learned that my husband had intended to marry his affair partner and had brought her to the family home. However, tired of the lack of money and the incessant nagging from my mother-in-law, she eventually broke off the relationship with him. Likely, they hadn't saved enough because they were counting on my inheritance. My mother-in-law and husband are living together, but because they used to splurge with my income, they've developed a habit of wasteful spending and can't seem to lower their standard of living. Apparently, they impulsively buy unnecessary things and are struggling financially. Moreover, since they lost me, who acted much like a housekeeper, they hardly do any housework and live lazily. As a result, their home has turned into a garbage dump. Feeling weakened by their deteriorating living conditions, my husband made a desperate plea. I was wrong. Can we start over? However, using the restraining order as a shield, I immediately refused and blocked his calls. I will never forget their attempt to harm me for my inheritance. The family home had become decrepit, with weeds overgrowing in the garden and a gloomy atmosphere, making it known in the neighborhood as a haunted house. Meanwhile, my brother-in-law and I celebrated our newfound freedom. Thank you, Vanessa. Thanks to you, I can start over in life. Released physically and emotionally, my brother-in-law seemed softer in demeanor. He was my comrade in escaping that house. Now, neither of us was bound to that place anymore. Steve and I had taken the first steps towards leading our own free lives.
Wow, so adorable. Upon hearing the news of my best friend's childbirth, my husband and I headed to the maternity clinic. The newborn baby was incredibly tiny, making me feel the preciousness of life. Meanwhile, my heart was filled with hatred. Despite this baby being so cute, I'm sorry. I might make you experience some difficulties from here on out. When I returned to my best friend's hospital room, my husband opened his mouth with a full smile. Well, that baby was really cute, wasn't it? Upon hearing his words, my best friend smiled happily, saying thank you. Then my husband also turned his smile toward me. Right. You thought the baby was cute too, didn't you? Yes, looks just like you. Huh? The expressions of my husband and my best friend hardened at the same time. To them, I delivered my final notice. My name is Catherine, 29 years old. I studied economics in university and now I work at my parents' company. My family has running this company since my grandfather's generation, and currently my father is the president. In the future, my husband, Michael, is supposed to take over as president. I met Michael about 4 years ago. Originally, he was a client of my company, but we had particularly no contact. However, it was by chance we ended up working together, and we hit it off. We were the same age, so we were able to talk to each other on an equal footing. Perhaps because of my title as the president's daughter, I was kept a certain distance by the people around me. For me, having someone like him who treated me normally was invaluable. Catherine, even though you are the president's daughter, you don't have any sort of dignity, do you? Before we started dating, he said that to me. Normally, if someone said that, you'd think they were making fun of you. But I was happy to be treated as an equal, like an ordinary employee. That's the first time someone said that to me, but thank you. Thank you? Don't people usually get mad when they're told they lack dignity? I wanted to be treated not as the president's daughter, but as an employee, so... Well, you're lucky to have me then. Indeed. From this point on, my relationship with Michael deepened quickly. It naturally progressed to dating, and he proposed to me on our 2-year anniversary. I never thought I would get married so soon. I remember feeling really happy and very surprised. When Michael proposed to me, I immediately reported it to my best friend Linda. Linda, it's serious. What should I do? He proposed to me. What? Really? That's great, isn't it? I still can't believe it. Do you think I'm good enough? What are you talking about? It's because you are you that Michael proposed, right? I've known Linda since junior high school, and she's one of the few people who treated me the same, even after knowing that my parents are company presidents. She didn't change her attitude or get unnaturally distant because I'm the president's daughter. Nor did she suddenly try to get close to me. She always treated me straightforwardly. When I started dating Michael, she was the first person I reported to. We have met several times as a trio, and Linda self praised Michael as a wonderful person. It really is a joy when your loved one get along with each other. It seemed that Linda was genuinely happy about the proposal. 2 years have passed since I got married to Michael. We still don't have children. This is because we rarely have marital relations. Apparently, my husband's company is busy, and he seems to be working overtime on weekdays. On the contrary, my company is relatively calm, and I can usually go home on time. After that, my daily routine was to prepare dinner. On this day, I was preparing dinner. I received a call from my husband. When I answered the phone, he spoke with a voice full of apology. I'm sorry, Catherine. I'm going to be late again today, so I don't need dinner. What? I've already started making it. I'm sorry, but I can't help it, right? I can't go home. Then why don't you eat when you get home? No, my subordinates are also working overtime, so I'll get something to eat before I go home. As a boss, I have to treat them at times like this. Besides, I have to work hard now to succeed your father, right? That may be true, but... Anyway, that's what's going on. I'll be late, so you can go to bed first. After saying that, my husband hung up the phone without waiting for my response. As the disconnection sound rang, my irritation grew. What was that tone just now? I always ask him to tell me earlier if he doesn't need dinner. And why has he suddenly started working so much overtime since we got married? When we were dating and just after we got married, my husband always came home early. Despite that, in the past year or so, my husband's return has become significantly later, and we often don't see each other on weekdays. I don't want to have children soon, but that's not the issue right now. My husband doesn't seem to feel the same way, and on his days off, he either sleeps at home or goes out on his own. We hardly spend any time as a couple, and only my frustration have been accumulating. One day, I received a message from Linda and decided to meet her for the first time in a while. As I was waiting at our regular cafe, Linda arrived a little late. Sorry for being late. Things were a bit chaotic before I left home. It's totally fine. I have a lot to talk about with you. What's up? Did something good happen? On the contrary, I've been having trouble with Michael recently. We've just been drifting apart. Really? It's unusual for you to talk about Michael like that. It's true that I've never complained about Michael before. But now, I'm so frustrated with his attitude that the complaints just come out naturally. Even though I finally got to see my best friend after a long time, the fun atmosphere was completely ruined. So, I forced the conversation back to Linda. How about you, Linda? What's been going on recently? I thought there might be something up since it's been a while since we met. Well, actually, there is something I wanted to let you know about. What is it? Don't tell me you've got a boyfriend. Well, actually, I'm pregnant. Huh? My mind started spinning at an incredible speed. Linda's statement left me utterly bewildered. What does she mean? Linda doesn't even have a boyfriend yet. And yet, she's pregnant. But now that I look closely, her belly is showing. She must have sensed my confusion. She quickly put on a smile and started explaining. I'm sorry for surprising you. I'm 7 months pregnant now. Wait, so you are already past your second trimester? Who's the father? Well, about that, I don't plan on marrying him. What? What do you mean? You know who the father is, right? Yeah, but things are a bit complicated. We're not getting married, but he's agreed to pay child support, so I'll be okay. Really? I don't want to interfere if you're okay with it, but raising a child alone, even with child support, won't be easy for Linda. If they know each other and have feeling for each other, shouldn't they be together? I can't help but think that. But she must have struggled with it and made her decision. If she had chosen to raise the child alone without marrying, all I can do is support her. Criticizing her or preaching to her here and now would only make her feel insecure. Convinced of this, I smiled and squeezed Linda's hand. Linda, you've made your decision, haven't you? Yes, I'm sorry, Catherine. I didn't mean to worry you. Don't worry about me. I'm just concerned about you. If there's anything I can do, just let me know, okay? Catherine, thank you. I'm sorry. Stop apologizing already. Despite being pregnant, Linda looked somewhat gloomy. Although I've never experienced it, pregnancy may not be just a happy event. As her best friend, I decided to do whatever I could to support her. That night, I waited for my husband to come home and decided to tell him about Linda's pregnancy. When my husband finally came home past 11 o'clock, I immediately brought up the topic. Listen, Michael, Linda's pregnant. Oh, really? Wow, that's something. Aren't you more surprised? She's pregnant, you know? Yeah, that's great. Linda's finally going to be a mother, huh? Well, it seems that she's decided not to marry the father. There seems to be something circumstances. Is that so? Well, everyone has their circumstances. Maybe it's best not to pry too much. At that moment, I felt a strange sense of discomfort. Whenever I talk about Linda, my husband always listened attentively. But today was different. Instead of showing interest in the big news of her pregnancy, he seems to be avoiding the topic. Michael is supposed to be good friends with Linda too, so why is he acting so distant? I thought he'd be more surprised, more excited. The next day, my husband left the house early in the morning. I didn't have anything particular to do as I had a day off from work. So I decided to choose a gift for Linda's baby even though it was a bit early. Then, with bad timing, my phone died, so I booted up the computer that my husband usually uses. It must have been in sleep mode because several tabs were left open. Without giving it much thought, I checked the opened tabs. Among them was an email folder. I thought to myself, does Michael exchange emails on his computer? While thinking this, I moved the mouse to navigate the screen. Then, among the senders, I saw a familiar name. Wait, Linda? For some reason, Linda's name was in the email folder. I opened the email with a bad premonition and was taken aback by its contents. What was written there was something that confirmed the affair. Exchanges like "I love you" and "I want to see you soon" were enough to make me doubt my own eyes. There were a lot of emails from around 6 months ago, probably when her pregnancy was confirmed. The next line made my eyes pop open in anger. I'm pregnant. It's Michael's baby. In response to Linda's email, my husband had replied kindly. He was happy about the pregnancy but couldn't divorce me. He promised to provide as much money as needed for the child once he became a company president. He also mentioned that he wanted to continue their relationship as it was. The moment I saw those exchanges, my emotions were filled with anger. I had been deceived by my husband and Linda. The trust that I had built up with them over time collapsed in an instant. Unforgivable. They were having an affair behind my back. What does he think I felt when I heard about Linda's pregnancy? I knew Linda was in a difficult situation, but I was genuinely envious. We had been drifting apart despite my longing for child. Despite my jealousy, I was happy for my best friend's pregnancy. Yet, I had been betrayed long ago. From that day on, I decided to gather evidence of the affair. Not only the exchange of emails, but I also hired a private investigator to look into my husband's affairs. Almost daily, it turned out my husband was visiting the apartment where Linda was living alone. On holidays, the two would even go to shopping mall in the neighboring prefecture to shop for baby goods. In the photos I received from the private investigator, there were my husband and my best friend choosing baby clothes with happy smiles. I was supposed to be filled with anger, but for some reason, I couldn't stop crying. It should have been me with Michael. But it's too late to think about such things now. I've already decided to take revenge on them. When enough evidence had been gathered and I thought it was about time to confront them, I got a message saying Linda had started labor. I decided to hold off confronting them about the affair in this situation and decided to wait for Linda to give birth. The next day, I got a message from Linda saying the baby was born safely. Then my husband suggested, let's go see her, armed with evidence. I accompanied him to the maternity ward where Linda was hospitalized. Confronting her about the affair immediately after she gave birth may make me a cold-hearted person. Still, I couldn't back down. We were led to Linda in her hospital room, and my husband and I headed to the newborn room. There were a few newborns, and Linda pointed to one of them. That's the baby I gave birth to. It's a bit small. Wow, it's really cute. You did a great job, Linda. It was super painful, but once the baby was born, I forgot all about it. Mothers are amazing. On the other hand, my heart was filled with hatred. Even though the baby is so adorable, I'm sorry. I may cause you a bit of trouble from now on. After that, when we returned to Linda's room, my husband opened his mouth with a full smile. Wow, the baby was really adorable. At his word, Linda smiled happily and said thank you. Then my husband turned his smile to me. Right, Catherine. You think so too, don't you? Huh? I mean, babies are so cute, aren't they? Yes. It looks just like you. Huh? The expressions of my husband and my friends froze simultaneously. With a strained face, he managed to make a smile at me. Hey, Catherine, what are you saying? It sounds weird when you say it looks like me. I'm saying it in that weird way. Sorry, but I already know. I know about your affair and that you are the father of the baby. At my words, the two of them were at a loss for words. Especially Linda. Her face turned pale in an instant and she began to tremble. I took out the evidence I had collected and thrust it in front of them. Then the blood drained from their faces. Michael, do you still plan to deny it after seeing this? Are you going to play dumb? No, it's not like that. I only had an affair once. So what? Even if that were true, the fact remains that Linda got pregnant from that one time, right? Well, that... Ignoring my husband, I turned my gaze to Linda. Sensing my cold gaze, she hurriedly apologized. I'm sorry, Catherine. I didn't mean for this to happen. I liked Michael, yes, but I never thought I'd get pregnant. Enough of that. I don't care what your feelings were. The fact is that you had an affair, had a relationship, got pregnant, with my husband's child and gave birth. That's the fact. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize. I have no intention of forgiving you. No way. Linda is shedding tears, but I cannot forgive her. They did such a thing. They must face the consequences. I spoke firmly to the two of them. I'm going to claim damages from both of you. Whether there's a child or not, doesn't matter. You're going to pay me proper damages. I'll of course report this to both of your parents. And I'm divorcing Michael, so let's forget about the next present thing. From now on, do as you please. Leaving those words behind, I left the hospital room. I immediately went to a law firm and requested them to proceed with the claim for damages and the divorce. Later, my husband's fault was acknowledged and the divorce was successfully completed. Damages were claimed from both Michael and Linda, and they were ordered to pay in one lump sum. I thought they might get married as they were, but both of their parents were furious. The marriage was not allowed, and Linda was taken back to her parents' home. Her parents took care of the child, and Linda had to work day and night to repay the debt she owed due to the damages. Michael, for his part, had been doing his job at the company half-heartedly, thinking he would become the next president, and had been telling everyone around him I'll quit soon. As a result, he was completely ostracized within the company, and of course, there were no promotions in his future, and he seems to be viewed with disdain by those around him. Apparently, they haven't seen each other since then. I can't help but feel a sense of, you reap what you sow, serves you right. As for me, I'm working hard every day. After divorcing Michael, I became a candidate for the next president, and I'm trying hard to meet the expectation of those around me. I want to repay my parents for the worry I caused them by succeeding in my work. Marriage isn't everything. I'll find happiness in my own way.
What do you think? Even when asked, how would I know that make up your own mind, he said. Not willing to listen to me, thinking about how James and his friends could spend the rest of their days in Saipan without anyone disturbing them, I realized there was no longer a need to hesitate. When we returned home, we quickly started packing. Can we move right now? Yes, it's fine. They quickly arrived and started moving out our packed belongings. Then, we immediately headed to the real estate agency. I wanted to sell my house. The employee at the real estate agency was a very kind person and helped us with the procedure to sell the house on the same day. Now James had completely lost his home. My name is Kate, 43 years old. I live in an apartment in the city with my husband James. I married James 5 years ago. Because we got married late and we're not blessed with children, we don't have any kids. But still, because of James' words, life's joy isn't about just children. I'm not bound by the guilt of not being able to have children, and I am able to enjoy each day. James is 45 years old and in the prime of his working life. Lately, he's been working overtime and often comes home late. I used to work at the same company as James, but I quit when we got married. James said it's a bit embarrassing to work at the same company as my wife, so I want you to quit. And so I respected James' opinion, quit my job, and have been a housewife ever since. One day, I got a phone call from my sister-in-law who lives in the next town. It had been a while since we last spoke, and she said, "I'm a bit worried about Mom. I can't go and check on her right away, so could you go and see how she's doing?" My sister-in-law is a very dependable person, and she has helped me many times since I married James. She has 2 children both in junior high and high school, and they are growing up to be fine children. As for my sister-in-law's children, I can understand why they are growing up to be good kids, since she is a wonderful person who I respect. Because it was a request from my sister-in-law, of course, I hurriedly went to check on my mother-in-law the next day. You can see how wonderful my sister-in-law is if you look at my mother-in-law. I love my mother-in-law. She's a straightforward person, always logical, and has her own opinions. If something is wrong, she can correct it properly, and she cares for those around her well. I'm truly grateful to have met such a wonderful mother-in-law and sister-in-law through my marriage to James. Was shocked when I arrived at my in-laws' home and went inside. There were things scattered everywhere with no place to step and a lot of garbage. It was like a garbage house. My mother-in-law is a clean person. Something was wrong. My mother-in-law was there, not doing anything in particular among the scattered items, looking lost. I called out to her, "Mother-in-law." Then the mother-in-law slowly turned to me and said, "Who are you again?" as she stood up. Then she turned to James, who had come with me, and said, "Oh, it's you, James. Welcome." We were shocked. Given the drastic change in my mother-in-law, we quickly made a hospital appointment the next day and had her examined. After several days of various tests, the results came out. She had dementia. Moreover, she required nursing care. We called my sister-in-law to my in-laws' house and had a discussion. The fact that she needed nursing care meant that we had to take care of her at my in-laws' house. My sister-in-law said, "Thank you, Kate, I'll take care of the rest," but surprisingly, James opposed it. "No, sis, your house is too far away and it would be hard for the kids to move here." Indeed, because my sister-in-law's house is in the next town, her youngest child would have to transfer schools. "We'll move to our parents' house and take care of her. That's okay, right, Kate?" I was surprised. I didn't think James was such a responsible person. While moved by James' feelings, I made up my mind and said, "Of course. Above all, it's for my beloved mother-in-law." And so the days of taking care of my mother-in-law began from this day. I moved to my in-laws' house and every day with my mother-in-law began. While taking care of the house, I also looked after my mother-in-law in all aspects, because my mother-in-law would try to go somewhere if I took my eyes off her. I always had to keep her in my sight. Even when I was doing the laundry, cleaning, or cooking, I always kept an eye on my mother-in-law. But at some point, I looked at her expression. I noticed that she seemed quite lonely. I wondered if this kind of life was enjoyable for my mother-in-law. Even though my mother-in-law has dementia, of course, she must have things that she finds enjoyable or happy. Being watched all the time by my side and being still can't be fun. I tried asking, "Mother-in-law, would you like to help me hang up the laundry?" Then my mother-in-law's face brightened and she said, "Of course, I'd be glad to," and started to help me hang the laundry. While it can't be helped that her hands don't move well, above all, she seemed to enjoy hanging the laundry. I was happy to realize that this was indeed the right answer. Since then, whether I'm cooking or cleaning, instead of just watching over my mother-in-law, I decided to do things with her. Perhaps due to this, it seems that my mother-in-law has started to enjoy moving around when it's a sunny day. "Since it's a nice day today, shall we have lunch in the park?" "That sounds nice. It seems like it would be refreshing." We would go to have lunch together on such occasions. I never found this lifestyle to be tough. My sister-in-law always took care of the hospital drop-offs and pickups, and her 2 children often came to see my mother-in-law. However, there was one person who was not cooperative at all. That was James. Initially, it was James who said, "We will take care of my mother." But James didn't help at all. Even when I reported things that happened with my mother-in-law during the day, James would listen with a bothered look, giving dull responses. Even when I asked him for a little help, he would say, "I'm tired from work. Why do I have to get tired at home too?" Recently, James has been coming home late due to overtime, so he might indeed be tired, but I wish he would help a little. Even when he comes home, he doesn't talk to his mother at all. Even when I ask him, "Next time, I think we should do this for mother-in-law. What do you think?" he would say, "Why should I know that? Decide it yourself." And he doesn't listen to the conversation. Given the situation, it feels like James is just coming home from work to sleep. One day, James didn't come home even when it was already 11 p.m. Recently, he often said he was working overtime and would often come home past 11, so I assumed it was the same case that day and went to bed earlier. However, for some reason, I had trouble falling asleep that night. Before I knew it, it was already past midnight. I was wondering why James was late when I heard the sound of a car outside. I found it strange to hear a car at this hour, so I looked out the window and saw James getting out of a car. And then I saw a woman in the driver's seat. The moment they got out, James and the woman were laughing happily, and unbelievably, they kissed. I had unconsciously taken a picture of the moment with my phone, and I was amazed at myself. Our house has a bedroom on the first floor. The distance from the bedroom window to the car wasn't too far, and the picture captured the scene perfectly. The shock was such that my hands wouldn't stop shaking. When I heard the front door open, I hurriedly got back into bed. And that picture would be my trump card later. From that night on, I began to watch his behavior more carefully. Then I started noticing several things that seemed odd. To begin with, claiming he was working overtime seemed unnatural when I thought about it. James might have forgotten, but we used to work at the same company. I know what kind of work James does, and if I think about it, it's clear that his work doesn't require overtime. And if it's just a simple lie like that, I could verify whether it's true or not. So I decided to call a friend who used to be my coworker. "Long time no see, what's up?" "Sorry for the sudden call, but I wanted to ask about James' department at work. Is it really busy these days?" "James? Nope. I got assigned to his department last month, but it's pretty laid back. I sometimes wonder if we should even be getting paid." I knew it. There's no way he'd have overtime in such a slack situation. That means on the days when James said he was working overtime, he was probably spending time with his mistress. My suspicions turned into convictions. One morning, as James was leaving for work, I noticed he had a large bag. I asked him suspiciously, "Why are you carrying such a big bag?" He seemed strangely flustered and stuttered, "I suddenly have to go on a business trip for a week. Please take care of things while I'm gone." "A week? Where are you going?" "Oh, well, I'm not sure yet. I need to check out the office, so I'm leaving now." And with that, he left in a hurry. I sent a message to my friend on text. "Is there anyone on a business trip today?" "I'm not sure, but there shouldn't be. We haven't had any big assignments recently." Just as I thought. That means he plans to leave the house for a week to meet his mistress. Then I heard my mother-in-law calling my name. "Kate." And then she showed me a piece of notepaper. On it, written in James' handwriting, was a name that seemed to be a hotel, a phone number, and the dates and room numbers for today and tomorrow. This paper came out of James' pocket before I washed his clothes the other day. If I had known, I would have given it to you sooner. I'm sorry, Kate, on behalf of James." "So you also knew about James?" "Kate, you can't just let this slide. James must be given a fitting punishment. There's no time to wallow." My mother-in-law saying so was just like she used to be before she developed dementia. Seeing her so assertive after such a long time really got me fired up. Yes, I won't forgive him no matter what. First, taking into account my mother-in-law's opinion, we decided to call my sister-in-law. As soon as she arrived, my sister-in-law apologized, saying, "Kate, I'm so sorry, my stupid brother," and bowed her head. I tried to comfort my sister-in-law, telling her she didn't need to apologize, and the three of us started to plan our next move. First, we looked at the note and confirmed the location of the hotel. James would probably be staying at this hotel for the next 2 days. After that, what to do? The next day, we decided to drive to the hotel in my sister-in-law's car. When we arrived, we found ourselves at the hotel not so far from LAX airport in Los Angeles, and in the hotel parking lot, we saw a familiar car. I looked at the photo on my smartphone. Of course, it was the picture of James kissing that woman that night. It was the same car that was in the photo. After a while, a man we recognized emerged from the hotel. It was unmistakably James. We hid in the shadow of the car to avoid being seen. A woman came out after him and linked arms with James. I took a photo of the scene, unable to believe what I was witnessing. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law were also left speechless. There was a little boy about 1 year old. The child happily took James' hand and the three of them walked off cheerfully. To an outsider, they would look like a happy, loving family. I, his actual wife, was the one capturing the scene. I felt pathetic, but there were no time to dwell on that. The three of them headed straight to the airport. They left the car at the hotel. Upon arriving at the airport, they laughed and joked around, before disappearing into the airplane boarding area. Their destination was Saipan. Thinking about James and his companions spent the remaining days happily in Saipan. Without any interruptions, I no longer had any doubts. When we got home, we quickly started packing while tidying up the house. We called the moving company and asked, "Can we move right now?" They replied, "Yes, that's fine." They came right away to help us pack. They started to take away the packed items, and we decided to temporarily store them at my sister-in-law's house. After that, we immediately headed to the real estate agent. I wanted to sell my house. The staff at the real estate agency was very kind and helped us to arrange for an immediate sale. Now, James would no longer have a home to return to. Just thinking about it made me feel exhilarated. Afterward, my mother-in-law and I got a room at a nearby business hotel where we would stay for a while. After those plans had settled down, there was something I had to confirm, so I went to the city office. The child that James and his mistress were with, was it James' child? I came to check James' family register to confirm this. If he has acknowledged a child, it should be recorded in the family register. And indeed, on the paper handed to me at the reception, the unknown child's name was recorded as James' son. James had indeed told me that children are not the only joy in life, but did James want a child? Because he couldn't have a child with me, did he cheat and have a child with someone else? Even if I think about it, only he would know, but my mother-in-law said I couldn't just let this go and cry myself to sleep. I will never forgive him. 7 days later, a call came in from James to my smartphone. "Hey, where are you? I can't unlock the door and get in." Well, that's to be expected since I've already sold the house. What? What are you talking about? Congratulations on your 5-night, 6-day trip to Saipan. It must have been fun. With the three of you, wasn't it? I wonder if it made for good memories. Huh? I could tell James was frozen on the other end of the phone. I continued, "Your home is no longer there. We've moved and sold it. You should go home to the woman and the child you have." Wait, it's not what you think. That's not my child. I was finally so angry at James for still making excuses at this point that I unleashed all the anger I'd been holding back. "Don't you dare joke with me. You even recognized the child, and now you've had enough of making a fool out of me. Do you think your excuses are going to work now? I don't ever want to see a terrible man like you again." Perhaps because this was the first time I'd ever been so angry, my husband fell silent. I had been speaking on speakerphone, and my mother-in-law spoke up. "James, just so you know, no matter how much you try to talk your way out of it, it's impossible. We have all the evidence, and the lawyer is listening to this call. Kate will be claiming damages from you, so be sure to pay them without fussing. And by the way, I'm cutting all ties with you as a parent. Don't even think about relying on me. And I won't leave you a single penny of my inheritance." Wait, what do you mean, Mom? You're not suffering from dementia at all, are you? "You idiot! I do indeed have dementia, but when Kate is so hurt and in such a crisis, what good would it do if I didn't pull myself together? Kate has been devoted to me all the time. I can't be her mother-in-law if I can't repay that." Hearing these words, I couldn't help but tear up. Even though my husband treated me so terribly, I truly believed that having met such a kind mother-in-law and a supportive sister-in-law who were always there for me was truly a blessing. I was the happiest bride. After that, James paid me the $57,000 in compensation that I had requested all at once. Although it was quite a large amount, thanks to the great work of my lawyer, we managed to get him to pay the full amount. The photos that served as evidence were definitely useful, but what was most effective was indeed the existence of a hidden child. The fact that I couldn't have a child was one of the reasons, but thinking about it now gives me a complicated feeling. I reported all the intricate details about James' affair to his company, and he became the talk of the town there. However, the rumors weren't good ones, so everyone from his colleagues to his bosses looked at him with cold eyes. Even so, having paid the compensation and depleted his savings, he couldn't afford to quit his job, and it seems that he is now miserably working every day at the office, shrinking under everyone's contemptuous gaze. His mistress turned cold on him when his savings ran out, and it seems he is not even allowed to see his child, but he still has to pay child support, so it seems his life is pretty tough both financially and mentally. The eldest child of my sister-in-law got accepted into a university and started living alone. As a result, my mother-in-law started living with my sister-in-law. I bought a piece of land and built a small single-story house there. That's where I started my new life. I'm now using the qualifications I already had to do a job I can do at home. My mother-in-law and sister-in-law often come over to play at my house, so I never feel lonely. My mother-in-law's dementia seems to have disappeared like it was a lie. The hospital doesn't call it a recovery, but my mother-in-law always says it's thanks to me. From now on, I want to find more joy in my life and live happily every day.
Emily, come right away! Rushing over at the teacher's words, I found my son collapsed on the spot. He had collided with his friend and fallen from the playground equipment and was unconscious. No matter how desperately I called my husband for help, he wouldn't come to our son's side for his work. No matter how busy he is with work, this is too much. Despite our son being rushed to the hospital. Then it hit me. The terrible reason he can't come to our son's aid. My name is Emily. I live with my husband, Todd, and our elementary school-aged son, Chris. Todd works in the hotel industry, so he doesn't have weekends off, and he can't participate in most of Chris's school events. He has never shown up for parent-teacher meetings or sports festivals. Even when we received a letter about a parent-child excursion, I still had to ask him, knowing he probably wouldn't be able to go. Todd, there's a parent-child trip during the next holiday. Holiday? I can't. I have work. Knowing this, yet I feel lonely. I heard from other mom friends that they are making arrangements to participate with their spouse. Some of the other husbands also work on weekends, but it seems like they're adjusting their schedule to take that day off. As I give it a shot with those words, Todd clearly became irritable and retorted. So what? Are you telling me to take a day off too? You do understand my job, right? You're right. Sorry. Resigned. I decided to participate in the parent-child outing just with Chris. In a group with many families of 3, there are also people participating with their father and child because the mother is absent. Well, there will be cases where the wife is working too. I was planning to enjoy the trip just with Chris, not caring about the others. However, once the children go off to play, I'm lonely, left alone. As the other mom friends are there with their husbands, it's hard to join in the conversation. While I was standing there in a daze, the teacher hurried over to me. Please come right away! What? What happened? Chris. He collided with a friend and fell off the playground equipment. Did he? Rushing to the scene, I found my son unconscious on the ground. The teacher immediately called an ambulance and I rode with him, who still wasn't conscious. Upon arriving at the hospital, he was immediately taken to the examination room. Suddenly, I realized I hadn't told Todd anything and quickly called him. Hello, Todd. Something terrible has happened. Chris fell from the playground equipment and hit his head. He's unconscious. What? Before calling me, you should have called an ambulance. The teacher did call the ambulance. Right now, he's been rushed to the hospital and he's being examined. I see. So you're at the hospital. Let me know the results by email. What? I doubted my own ears. Could it be? He's not planning on coming to the hospital during this emergency? What are you saying? Come home right now. To my outcry, he responded in a taken aback voice. Hey, did I tell you I can't take a break this holiday? Regardless of what you said, this is an emergency. You're at the hospital, right? There's nothing I can do if I go. For now, we just have to wait for the results. Let me know when you know. Bye. Saying that, he abruptly ended the call. I stared at my smartphone in disbelief. Even at a critical time like this, for a son, he wouldn't come home. As I stood there, stunned, a man approached me. Are you Chris's mother? I'm Henry's father. The man who approached me was the father of Henry, the friend who collided with Chris. I remembered him as one of the ones participating with his son because his wife was absent. Henry's father deeply bowed to me. I am deeply sorry for what happened. I quickly shook my head. The teacher told me that Chris and Henry collided head-on while running. It was also our fault for not paying attention, so please don't worry about it. Henry, wrapped in bandages, was standing next to his father, with tear-stained eyes. It's because I bumped into him. I gently said to him, It's not your fault, Henry. Chris will be fine. I'm sure of it. Once he's back to his usual self, will you play with him again? He nodded, tears still in his eyes. His father thanked me, looking relieved. Thank you for your kind words. Normally, my wife would also be here to speak with you. I'm sorry. No, it's okay. My husband can't come back either because of work. Does she work as well? No. He hesitated. My wife is actually on a trip with a friend. It was planned before this field trip, so she couldn't cancel. It's quite embarrassing. I see. I've tried to contact her many times about this accident, but I can't seem to reach her. She still doesn't know. Just as he finished speaking, his smartphone rang. Oh, it's my wife. Excuse me. He hastily picked up the phone to relay the situation to his wife. That's what happened. How long will it take for you to get back here? 2 hours. But how will you get back? You can't drive, can you? Oh, your friend is with you? That's a relief. Be careful then. After hanging up, he turned to me with a relieved expression. I'm sorry, I've just got through to my wife. It seems she has a friend who can drive her back here. The friend seems to have some business to come around nearby and to get here in about 2 hours. I see. Then my smartphone started ringing. Oh, it's my husband. Excuse me, I said before answering the call. What's going on, Todd? I'll be able to come there. I'm finishing my work in about 2 hours, and I'll head there immediately. Really? That's great! After ending the call, I reported to Henry's father. My husband will also be able to get here in about 2 hours. It's good that we can meet each other. We were called over by the doctor who had finished his examination. According to the result, there was nothing wrong with him. He had merely fainted due to a temporary shock, and they decided to keep an eye on him for now. Even though we were told that there is no abnormality, it was hard to feel relieved in a situation where we didn't know when he would regain consciousness. As I left the consultation room filled with anxiety, I saw that Henry's father had been waiting for me. He was holding Henry, who had fallen asleep for exhaustion. To distract ourselves, we started talking about our respective families. Henry's mother is a housewife, but she seems to go out with her friends quite often, on weekday evenings and weekends. In such cases, he would be in charge of childcare. My wife looks after Henry all day on weekdays, so I think it's only fair to let her have some time, off at night and on the weekends. But if I had known it would come to this, I would have asked her to cancel her trip during the excursion. Listening to the story, I couldn't help but compare him to my husband. Todd would go out on his own even on his days off during the week, let alone on weekends when he had work. On the other hand, Henry's father actively participated in childcare. I found myself unwittingly confiding him about my husband, complaining. While talking to him, I suddenly noticed a strange similarity. The actions of Todd and Henry's mother matched exactly. The days when they couldn't participate in events and the days when they went out on weekday nights were the same. I became curious and asked, "By the way, my husband went on a business trip to Shizuoka last month." Wait, when was that? It was the first weekend of last month. My wife also says she was going on a trip with friends on that day, and she brought back souvenirs from Shizuoka. Could it be? We looked at each other in shock. Nearly 2 hours had passed since we had called Todd and Henry's mother. The first contact was from Todd. "My husband will be arriving at the parking lot soon, so I'll go to meet him." I told Henry's father that and headed for the parking lot. I timidly looked into the car and saw that there was no one in the passenger seat. Could it be that Henry's mother was with him? Bringing a nonchalant Todd down from the car, I headed back to the hospital room where Chris was sleeping. After finishing a round of greetings with Henry's father, his wife appeared. I didn't miss the moment when she and Todd looked at each other and were momentarily lost for words. As if nothing had happened, he greeted her. "Nice to meet you. Thank you very much for always being nice to my son." Hearing Todd's cracked voice, she returned the greeting in a hurry. Yes, nice to meet you. The pleasure is all mine." To these two, I decided to set a little trap. "Oh, haven't you met my husband before?" Then she replied in a flustered manner. Of course, it's our first meeting, isn't it?" You don't have to deny it so desperately. It wouldn't be strange if you had met my husband at the school event or parents' meeting, right? No way. I had no idea that Todd's son was a classmate of my son. In front of her, I hadn't mentioned my husband's name even once. I sensed something off. This is a clear sign. At that point, I was certain of my husband's affair with her. Moreover, they seemed to be dating without knowing that their children were classmates. That's strange, isn't it? If it's your first time meeting, how do you know my husband's name? At my questioning, she was at a loss for words. That's... Then, Todd started to fiercely protect her. Hey, Emily, what's gotten into you? It's rude to her. She's the mother of an important friend of our son. Show some respect. His shouting woke Henry up. Then, pointing at Todd, Henry said, "Oh, it's the guy who comes to our house." The guy who comes to our house? The hospital room fell silent. His mother hurriedly tried to cover up his statement. Wait, Henry, what are you talking about? Are you confused with someone else? He looked stupefied. Then he continued. I'm not mistaken. Dad, lend me your tablet. Henry received the tablet from his father and showed a picture with ease. Look at this. The image was of a train toy that Henry had assembled in his room. There are railway toy sets released from our toy company. What's this? Isn't this the one you always play with? Henry pointed to the person in the background of the train toys in response to his mother's curious question. This is you, right? I remember because I look at this picture from the time to time. Looking closely, you could see the living room behind the children's room. And there was Todd chatting amiably with Henry's mother. With this, there's no room for excuses anymore. I muttered while glaring at them. Henry's father was also shaking his shoulders with anger. He yelled at his wife. While I was at work, did you bring your lover into our house? And this date, isn't it the day I wasn't home because I was on a business trip? I was also shocked when I saw that date. This date, it was also the day when Todd wasn't home because he was on a business trip, right? Don't tell me you stayed over at Henry's house? That's because she said it was okay. Todd quickly admitted to the affair and blamed it on Henry's mother. She heard this and hurriedly countered. What? Are you blaming me? You said it was a waste of money to stay outside. Henry's father put a stop to their ugly argument. Enough. It's disgraceful as a mother to let your lover stay in a house where there are children. You are the worst. I despise you from the bottom of my heart. Todd, who was taken aback by his words, took advantage of the situation and made his mistress the villain. She really is a disgrace as a mother. At least I've never met her in front of Chris. I do care about my child. What? What is he talking about? This is ridiculous. I was starting to feel angry with my husband. Stop joking around. You are going to go back to work, even though Chris was unconscious. That's not true. That's why I rushed to the hospital, right? That's because she decided to go home, right? You didn't even intend to go home a bit, until Henry's father told her about the child's injury. I thought it would be okay even if I wasn't there. Whether it's okay or not isn't the issue. If you're a father, you should rush to your child's side no matter what when you hear he's unconscious. Yet, you prioritize your trip with your mistress. You're not a father, not anything. No matter what you think, I'm Chris's father. What do you plan to do if he doesn't wake up? Can you, a housewife, continue to pay the hospital bills? Without me, you and your son can't survive. It is frustrating, but I didn't have the savings to keep paying the hospital bills. Do I have to turn a blind eye to Todd's infidelity for now? Just when I was about to give up, a faint voice came from the bed. Mom. Turning around, I saw that Chris has barely opened his eyes. Chris! I clung to my son. He hugged me back firmly and then said, Even if Dad's gone, I'll be fine. I'll protect you. Upon hearing his words, Todd stood dumbfounded. Chris, why would you say such a thing? Then our son answered firmly, Isn't that already leaving home? You said so on the phone the other day after Mom fell asleep, didn't you? On the phone? I heard Dad talking when I got up to go to the bathroom. I don't have any feelings for Emily. If we didn't have a child, I would leave home immediately and be with you. Dad, you said that, didn't you? Well, Todd's face turned pale. That's why I'm going to grant Dad's wish. I don't need to be Dad's child. I don't need a dad anymore. At his son's words, Todd was shocked. On the other hand, I finally made up my mind with Chris's words. I've made up my mind. Please separate from me. When I told my husband, Henry's father handed me his business card. I'll help you with your decision. On the business card he handed me was the title of the head of the law firm. Apart from this picture of trained toys, there should be plenty of evidence. Leave the claim for child support to me. I also intend to firmly accuse my wife, so it's two birds with one stone. At his words, Henry's mother suddenly became flustered. Wait, I haven't agreed to a divorce yet. I won't leave you. Then Henry's father coldly said to her, Huh? You, who cheated on me, have no right to choose. A despicable mother who cheats in front of her child can't be given custody. If you still object, will you go to court? You know how high my win rate in court is, don't you? Plus, I've got all these advantages lined up. There's no way I can lose. Perhaps she gave up. Henry's mother quickly slumped down and agreed to sign the divorce papers. Seeing her, Todd also signed a pledge to pay child support to my wife. He probably realized that it was useless to oppose the lawyer. After that, each of our couples got divorced. The freed Henry's mother and Todd, as planned, started living together. However, their lifestyle was different from what they planned. Once they started living together, they started suspecting each other of cheating with someone else, and their relationship reportedly began to strain. Tired of such a relationship, Todd really cheated on her and started dating with another. As ever, Todd was sloppy in his infidelity, and the affair was quickly exposed by the other woman's husband. Apparently, he is once again being sued for damages. Henry's mother, too, had an affair with another man, but all he did was milk her for all she was worth before discarding her without a second thought. Henry's mother, all her savings squandered and thought drawing in debt from paying compensation. They blame each other for their situation, unable to break up, and they seem to be just dragging their relationship out. At this rate, it's plain to see that their life will become unmanageable due to their debt repayments. But I feel no sympathy for them. They brought it upon themselves. Serve them right. On the other hand, thanks to the efforts of Henry's father, I've received more than enough child support, and I'm still living a peaceful life with Chris. Since then, Chris has managed to live a normal life without any issues. As before, he gets along well and plays with Henry. Nowadays, Henry's father has become a great confidant, and their relationship has evolved to something more than the one with mom friends. My wish now is to continue living a happy life with Chris, just the two of us.